Nathan.
Hi.
Thanks for coming.
Absolutely.
Let's check out your rig.
Cool. Well, I guess if you look at this, one thing that will stand out immediately is that there are lots of different clocks and clock dividers and clock sequencers. Lots of different what I would call ways to generate and distribute control voltage. What I mean by that, for instance, is I have three kind of normal, I would say orthodox envelopes here, but then the PEG, which is the 4MS envelope generator, I can use that to generate envelopes as well. So that's two more. So that's 5 envelopes. I also have, for instance, the clock divider and a clock sequencer here, as well as a sequencer that is big, but I like it because it has also these trigger outs here. So there are lots of different ways to, again, produce and distribute different possible events to these two VCAs plus this low pass gate, which basically means low pass filter, and a VCA. So there's a VCA basically built into this that you can use when you click it over, or you can use both at the same time. So I might have a pulse, a square wave coming from here, this half square wave, and I might run that up to my multiple, and then I can multiply that. That means make it faster while I'm dividing it right here, doing the same thing, dividing it over here. So basically that one clock we called a clock is then being changed in a variety of ways to be slower or faster, to the point where this is no longer the center of it anymore, and it's no longer the root. At that point, this is just one more time amongst the others, so things can shift and change over the course of a piece. Oftentimes when you see something like this, it's because people are making a lot of techno with a lot of triggers and whatnot, whereas I use all the triggers and whatnot to create slow changes and slow music for most of the music I make. So that's one thing that should jump out without getting too complicated. Lots of envelopes, lots of possibilities with regards to triggers, and lots of ways to change the clock, to alter the clock, to make it slower or faster. Another thing you will notice is the types of filters I use. I like Vactral filters. These are 3 different kinds of Vactral filters. Vactral is a certain type of circuit that is a light sensitive circuit inside, so it's kind of both smoother but more unpredictable. This Vactral filter I like because it's smoother, but of course it's multifunctional. It's a Doepfer, one of the few Doepfer designs that actually emulates a Buchla design, whereas most Doepfer modules don't. That's mostly the new stuff, like Make Noise stuff, that is Buchla kind of emulating. And it has a VCA in it, which is cool. This is a multi-type Vactral filter, which has all sorts of possibilities, because you can have stuff you have 3 different types of filters and different ways the sound can come out with respect to what's being filtered and whatnot. And then this is old. This is an older module that I don't think is, well, I don't think Plan B is around anymore. This is highly unpredictable. It's supposed to be unpredictable. So what happens is, instead of necessarily just producing smooth sounds, you get all sorts of strange rhythmic events from the filter, especially as you send these triggers into the frequency and into the bandwidth control. So you can have all sorts of strange sounds, crazy sounds happening periodically, depending on where you're at with your step and whatnot. Also, for instance, the smart oscillator here, that can function, as most oscillators can, as an LFO as well. So basically there's a lot of ways for me to shape sound, as well as a lot of ways for me to create control voltage based events or triggers with this setup. one thing I really like is this BBD module, a bucket Brigade delay. It has a kind of really good classic warm delay sound. It's really noisy though. The oscillator that's used to create the delay is really noisy, and oftentimes most people will run it through a filter. I like the noise so I tend to try not to do that. But when you run a really slow delay down here, it is crazy noisy, really hissy. Yeah, that's kind of my approach. When I use my sequencer, when I'm making slow music, I tend to run a very slow clock in, and what I do is use these two different rows to create chords, meaning basically in my lingo, when I say a chord, which would be what most people would mean, it would mean like basically a first and a fifth in a certain in a certain key. So I would run these each to a separate oscillator, so I can produce thicker, bigger sounds. But instead of moving fast, like what most people would think with a sequencer, instead of going do-do-do-do-do-do-do, I use it to really create slow, subtle changes over time. My first introduction to modular synths was a Buchla that was at Evergreen State College in Washington State. It kind of famously had two Buchlas. It had the big 200 system, I think is what it's called.
Yeah.
And then a music easel that was stolen a couple years ago. But back in the 90s when I was there was a very open atmosphere at Evergreen. And I wasn't part of the music program, but I had many friends who were, so it was really easy to go up there at all sorts of hours and make crazy music on the Buchla.
Okay, yeah.
So I played with that more than a couple times. It was really intimidating. It was a way I wasn't used to thinking about how to produce music. I had my first synth when I was 16. My boss owned a record store and sold me a mini mode for $100.
Really?
I was very lucky.
Okay.
And I was still trying to figure it out. Back then you couldn't like go online and watch a YouTube tutorial.
No.
Like, I still think I was struggling with sometimes turning it on and thinking, where's the sound? And it's because my filter was all the way down, to be honest. Like, there wasn't really a culture around analog synthesis at that time. And I'm talking about like the late 80s and early 90s. Everything had become digital. And so it was really hard to learn those instruments because there wasn't much support. So then I discovered this Buchla, some friends brought me to it, and I was just, whoa. I was scared of it, and it was amazing. But then many years went by, and I wasn't using modular synths. I would use way too many keyboard synths. So when I would do a set, I could have anywhere between 3 to 5 synthesizers I was using at the same time.
Okay, after a minimum, you started collecting a few of them. Yeah.
I had a couple ARPs, and some
those
others.
are nice. Yeah.
I had a couple ARP Omnis and some Axes and stuff like that. And I would use them all together. And the problem was each one had its own timbre, kind of, its own. I know that you supposedly can make a million different timbres with a synthesizer, but each one kind of had its own vibe.
Yes.
And then I found if I wanted to create a song, I would have to have all these synthesizers to have all these different vibes. And I got sick of it. It became crazy to carry around 5 synthesizers to play a show. And that's when I got back into to modular synthesis. I didn't get back into it, I never was really into it, but that's when I was like, oh, thinking about the Buchla, I should get involved in modular synthesis. What was really cool is by the time I realized that, the Buchla platform wasn't the only one around anymore, and the other ones as well were all really expensive. So it was hard to get into modular synthesis.
Yeah.
So Eurorack was incredibly affordable, so I could actually start to develop a system and no longer have to carry 5 synthesizers around and fuss with keyboards. I don't like keyboards. If you notice something here, there's no keyboard at all. I use sequencers and triggers to generate all of my different sound events and to change a note and stuff like that. I don't use key triggers at all. So yeah, it saved my back. It saved my knees, and and I'm healthy now because I'm in modular synthesis.
You don't have to, carry too many things.